Hi, this is this year's daily challenge wrap-up video featuring all the renders, turntable animations, alternative renders, work in progress renders, and a look at a few works from previous years. Day one, I did Tila. I always try to make some Masters of the Universe characters. As I record this, I just watched the new Netflix show, and by the time I made my Tila, I didn't even know that Tila was going to be the star of the new show. These are some works from previous years again. The Hornet. Last year I did the actual knight. This year I thought I'd do the Hornet. I was really intimidated by how the tunic was supposed to look, but otherwise the character and the model is pretty simple. Once I figured out how to do the tunic, I was happy with it. I also like to have always some Studio Ghibli character, and this year I thought of doing No Face. Especially also because it was a relatively simple one to make and a recognizable one. I want to make some more. I have done a few in the past. Here are some previous ones. Goro. Goro was one of my very first 3D sculpts back in like 2012. But I only did the face and the head, and I never finished it, so I thought now would be a great opportunity to go back and finish him, and I did. I've done other Shokans and other Mortal Kombat characters before, and bosses. Gremlins, right, Greta. I always wanted to do Greta, but I was intimidated by the hair and the textures and I did Stripe before, and I wasn't very happy with the result. I also did Gizmo in the very first challenge in 2015. So I wanted to make more Gremlins, and I like how she came out. Also, yeah, I always like to have some matte graining characters, and either from The Simpsons or Futurama. I've done Leela and Bender before. I would like to do some characters from Disenchanted, and this year I did Farnsworth. Earthworm Jim, another property that I love. I did Jim before. I always liked the villains, and I thought this guy was a good opportunity to make a sort of cartoony, stylized type of character that's not necessarily like the usual stuff that I do. There's my Jim from 2018. I love Alice in Wonderland. I always like to have some classic Disney characters. I was really intimidated by the Elizabethan color, and I didn't know if it was going to work, so once I kind of nailed that, I started to really do the character. I want to make more Alice characters. Phantom. I've been a fan for years, and I've been doing some fan art too, and I thought the Red Death was an interesting opportunity for having a Phantom piece this year. Using insert multi-mesh brushes really simplified this and made him ornate and interesting enough. The snowman. I love the snowman. I always wanted to do this. I was a bit intimidated for having to do two characters for one day, even when the snowman is simple enough. But I'm pretty happy with the result. I grew up watching reruns of the Adam West Batman, so I always wanted to make characters from that, the villains, actual Batman. But I still hadn't, and I thought Batgirl was a good one to make. I'm happy with how she turned out. Marvin's such an unusual one out of the Looney Tunes, and I always loved him, and I thought it would be interesting and sort of simple enough to make in a day as well. I think he came out okay. Also, I always try to have some kind of Star Wars character, but it's hard to choose one because there are so many that I want to do. But generally, my favorite ones, I would like to take more than just a sitting, so I don't like to make my favorite characters for the daily challenge. So it's always tricky. This guy came out as a pretty much of an excuse to make something quick and simple on a day, because if I was already behind schedule and I wanted to catch up. But it was fun to make. I think he came out okay. I forgot to break his legs, so he's whole. So I guess this is before meeting Lord Farquaad. Croc I love. I also really like this kind of mascot type of little characters from 90s and early 2000s platformers, and even when he was a bit of a rip-off of other characters, even the sounds he makes are very Mario 64. But I love him. It was a very fun game, and I want to make more of those. I also like to have in every challenge some character from this stop motion type of movies, either from Aardman or the Henry Selick movies. And I made Nightmare Before Christmas characters before. Asterix I love also. I grew up with the animated movies and the comics, so I always wanted to make him. Last year or in 2019 I did Obelix, and I really wanted to do actual Asterix, but this cartoony type of character with a very specific look is hard to nail, but I think it came out okay. Lady Dimitrescu, I thought it would be fun trying to make her. When I sculpted her, there was only one trailer out. I didn't really know what the back of the dress should look like, so I did what I could. She's very different, but I guess it's my interpretation of her. I always wanted to make more characters from the Del Toro sort of universe, and I've always been intimidated by actual Pan because he has got a lot of textures and hair. But this guy seemed simple enough. I should have textured him more. He's too smooth. At least I wanted to make all these folds and all this skin, and I guess it's okay. Pinky and the Brain I love all that era of Animaniacs and all of that Warner, Steven Spielberg animations. I thought they would be fun to make. Again, this kind of likeness is a bit hard to nail. I think they're okay as well. I am satisfied with them. I early on I did like a test to see if I could do Brain's face, and he looked okay, so I did it. Toothless, I'm very happy with. Again, probably I should have textured him more, but I feel like a basic shape is there, and it is recognizable, and I did everything I could within the one day that I had for the challenge. I love the style of Little Nightmares, and I wanted to make something. I didn't do 6 before because I felt like it was similar to Coraline, which I had already made. So I felt like I should do either a villain or a boss from Little Nightmares. But then Mono came along, and I thought I'll do Mono. Raised by Wolves, I really loved the show, and I thought it was an interesting sort of character to make, and it was simple enough. It just sort of basic anatomy and very few features. And I felt like it connects with other sort of robot ladies that I've done before. I did Maria from Metropolis, I did Ava from Ex Machina, and I really wanted to do this. Saint Seiya, I always loved the show. I also watched it like in my teens, and I always wanted to make an armor and a character, and Aldebaran is not necessarily my favorite knight or saint, but he's my sign. So I thought it would be like a fun one to make, and I think the armor came out okay. I don't like the face that I gave him. Artman is always also present in my challenges, and I wanted to make Shaun this year. I was intimidated by the wool. I ended up making this kind of texture with fibers, and then I inflated them so it looks less like wool and more like popcorn, but I think it worked. Journey. I really love the design and feel of Journey. I think I'm not happy with the proportions of how I made this guy, but I'm sort of happy with the look. I think it's recognizable. I don't know why I made him sort of barrel-chested and sort of weird. I always like to have some dinosaurs from Jurassic Park or Jurassic World in my challenge, so I thought this guy would be fun to make this year. I also learned a new technique. I didn't know how to punch the holes in the sculpt that I had already finished, and I learned how to use that brush now. Zagreus was really intimidating because of the gear, because of the skulls, because of the hair. I've never done quite this sort of anime spiky hair before, and I'm not happy with the face. He looks nothing like him, but I do like how all the gear came out. Ryuk was always on my list, but I was also intimidated because of the note, the accessories, the earring, the belt, the bracelet, the rings. I thought it was too much to make in a day, but I gave it a try and did it. I'm also very happy with the hair. It's the first time that I make this kind of spiky anime type of hair with actual fibers. Stoyanka. She was a character that I needed to write for my story, but I never knew what to do with her. And then actual real-life Stoyan came along and inspired me to do what I ended up doing with the character and what I will do with the character. And I finally feel like I know and love this character when I couldn't find her before. And that was it for this year. Thanks for watching. I'll probably do this again next year. I always tell myself I'm never gonna do this again, but I keep doing it every year.